There's a lot of things to look at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals, and it's not just cars. I'm here with Mr. Dana Forrester, who's the featured artist this year at this event.
Yes, that's right. I'm really honored to be a part of the event as a featured artist. It's always one of those things on the upward spiral that I like to be involved with.
Yeah, so tell me about the medium of choice that you created.
I use strictly watercolor. It's transparent watercolor on watercolor paper. It's kind of unforgiving to use it. If you make a mistake, you get to start over. But it's an interesting thing, and then most people will look at my work and not realize that all the white that you see is white paper left unpainted.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you do not use white. You don't use black. I create my dark colors from a series of colors mixed together, but the factories that make the black, it's just not the same color.
Sure, sure. One of the challenges, and I'm far from an artist, well, let me rephrase that. My dad used to say I'd sit in the corner and draw flies. Dealing with watercolor, you have to have a special level of patience because things can get too wet and get out of control.
Exactly. I work very dry. A lot of my areas, like the sky areas and some of the foregrounds and the streets, I'll do a traditional watercolor approach to it, but I work to create my images on other paper before I get started on the painting. That way, when I transfer my preliminary sketches to the watercolor paper, all the mistakes have already been made.
Interesting, yeah, so that there's a design phase and then an execution phase.
That's right, that's right. And everything is very deliberate the way that I do it. And I really set a sequence with each painting somewhat different than some of the others. Just depending on the colors that I'm going to use for items and people, cars in the background. And then I have to just continue working on that till it's done. Some pieces will be as little as 110 working hours. Others will run about 200, depending on the size and the complexity of it.
Yeah, because you have to constantly think in layers of color.
Yes, and I do a lot of layering. Anytime that you would see me use a brick wall sign in the background, there's a lot of bricks, but I have to create and actually paint those bricks 2 or 3 times to create the texture.
Well, that's kind of one of the things I think you're noted for. I mean, obviously the extremely accurate and interesting way you depict the vehicle, but the backgrounds, you know, you probably do brick sequences at least half the time, I guess.
Yeah, about that. It's I'm always on the lookout for new things that I want to use as a background, so I'm not really totally tied to the brick, but it's become a trademark and something that a certain number of people really expect to see.
Well, and it looks cool.
Yeah, I think it does, and I try to tie whatever the signs are in the background to the car.
Sure, so we have some accuracy with the not only the look of the car, but the signage in the background is contextual.
Exactly, and I oftentimes will take a car and look like park it at the curb going into a soda fountain, that kind of thing, to imply that the driver is inside.
Right, right.
The Margaritaville piece that I have is that way with the Panama Yellow 58 outside. The title is 2 for Margaritas, and you assume they're inside having a margarita.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, your inspiration, do you work off photographs, do you work off memory?
Well, both, really. I use my own photography. I photograph all kinds of cars, more than just Corvette. And then I file those digitally and go back to review what I'd like to create. Sometimes I get an idea from my childhood. I grew up in a town of 15,000 in northeast Missouri, Kirksville, and there were a lot of things there like a Tasty Freeze. There's pool halls that will show up in a painting. My very first brick wall that I painted was from there. So it's there's a lot of things that get drawn from ideas that I've had of childhood memory, or products from childhood memory.
Sure, sure, logos or stuff.
That's right.
Well, we all really appreciate it, and what I think is really, really nice is the level of complexity you build into these pays off over time, because you can hang one of these on your wall and maybe you look at the car, but then maybe 2 years from now you see other things, and certain parts become more important than not.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a, the gift that keeps on giving, to use a silly phrase.
Well, people enjoy looking at my work, and that's the whole purpose of it, is to make other people happy with what I'm doing.
Well,
really.
you do a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks for being out here.
Thank you.
Yep.